Hello everyone and welcome back to Bennett Does Games. Today I have the very distinct pleasure of telling you about Ender Lilies, Quietus of the Nights. Now, first of all, I want to thank Stride PR for providing me with early access for the purposes of this review, and let's get into it. If I had to sum up Ender Lilies in as few words as possible, I'd say it's what you would get if you took the City of Tears from Hollow Knight and just made an entire game out of it. And if you liked that specific part, which was like probably the coolest part of one of the best games ever made, then you're probably going to like Ender Lilies, because it is pretty much that, just non-stop from beginning to end. It's kind of impressive, to say the least. Now, the first thing you'll probably notice about the game is that the visuals are absolutely stunning. The backgrounds are gorgeously hand-drawn. The characters are detailed and absolutely beautiful. Now, I will say that a lot of the animation is done procedurally. If you see a flag waving in the wind, it's not a set of 30 frames looping, it's just somebody stretching and squishing that same flag sprite to simulate movement. Now, most of the time this looks perfectly fine. Other times it looks a little cheap, but this method is only ever used for background elements that you can easily just glance over and you go, okay, that looks a little weird, and then you focus back on the actual play area and everything just looks absolutely fantastic. The soundtrack too is insanely good. It's very emotionally heavy, I'd say. Again, I have to compare it to a game that came before it. Most of the game is what you would get if Gwyn's theme played throughout the entirety of Dark Souls, except obviously there's enough variety that it doesn't get annoying. So most of the time the music has this interesting mix of everything is horrible and sad and everyone is dead, but there's always this one instrument in the background that kind of reminds you, but you're here to fix it. And this dynamic I absolutely loved. Something that was a little bit of a letdown was that in the early access version, one of the areas that you arrive in first had the protagonist singing along to the background music. And I absolutely love that. I absolutely love the atmosphere that created. And unfortunately, from what I remember, this is actually the only song that the White Priestess sings along to, which was a little bit of a disappointment, but that's really just a nitpick. It's not a big deal. It does not take away from how incredible the presentation is throughout the rest of the game. Now, Ender Lilies is a Metroidvania. It's not trying to be a Souls-like Metroidvania. It's straight up going for, this is Igavania. And if you're not sure what that means, it's like Metroid, but it has some light RPG elements that make the game play slightly differently to what you would expect from Metroid, from Hollow Knight. The game mechanic that's the most obviously inspired by the Castlevania series is the fact that you don't collect any weapons, but instead you collect the spirits of people who succumb to the Blight, which is literally just the undead curse. It makes you immortal, but it also makes you go crazy. So whenever you defeat a boss or some of the, I think about 20 optional mini-bosses, you save their souls, and then those souls will assist you throughout the rest of the game. Now, the optional bosses are just small ways to deal more damage in combat. Whenever you're at a checkpoint, you can equip up to 6 different spirits in 2 sets of 3. And those extra spirits are abilities like creating a poison gas cloud in front of you, or creating a small raven spirit that fires at enemies from behind you. There's a lot of variety in those, and save for one, which I think I used for sequence breaking once, all of these optional spirits are just for combat, and they don't have any application outside of that. Now, the main bosses are a lot more interesting in that they give you new basic attacks that will help you navigate the world. So while you start off with a spirit that is exclusively for damage dealing, the Umbral Knight, who just unleashes a series of sword slashes in front of you and is your most basic standard attack. Every time you defeat one of the guardians, or one of the most powerful knights in the kingdom, you not only gain the ability to equip their attack power as one of your 6 spirits, you also gain new abilities that help you navigate the world. So there's very early on, there's a huge, like half-giant warrior with a massive hammer. And he's incredibly useful for swatting down flying enemies with one hit, and for hitting enemies through walls or through floors, which is very convenient. But he also gives you the ability to ground pound and break through pustulant floors. And that's pretty much how all the major bosses work, where they give you one power that's used to attack that you can either equip in one of your 6 slots or not, and one upgrade to your moveset. One of the first challenging bosses, I'd say, the Dark Witch Elaine, which was the final boss available in early access when I first played the game. When you defeat her, you gain an ability to throw homing projectiles, but you also gain the ability to move freely underwater, and obviously that's going to open up entire new parts of the map for you. So if you've played a lot of Metroidvanias before and really enjoy them, none of the abilities that you'll gain to navigate the world will be surprising to you. They're all fairly standard stuff. Like, you look at a certain type of wall and you go, okay, I know exactly what kind of ability I'm going to get later. That being said, they do put a twist on some of those navigation abilities that make perfect sense but aren't necessarily something that I've seen before. For example, the half-giant warrior will, as I said, allow you to ground pound. But what puts a little twist on it is the fact that the further you drop using the ground pound ability, the thicker the floor you can break through. So this creates these really fun moments of exploration where you see a particularly hardy type of breakable floor and you try to ground pound it and it doesn't work. So you start working your way up the map looking for the perfect spot to drop down from. And just the fact that, you know, since Metroidvanias are about figuring out, okay, I have this key, I need to find this door. So you explore the entire map, looking for different places to go, looking for new items you can find with the new abilities you've unlocked. And the fact that they managed to compress this whole exploration process of having a goal and seeing your goal, but not knowing how to get there yet. The fact that they managed to compress all of that into just singular rooms every now and again, where you can have an entire mini Metroidvania adventure just looking for a good vantage point to jump from. That I personally really enjoyed, and I think everyone who likes Metroidvanias will enjoy that. Now, something that obviously, once again, everybody who likes Metroidvanias will be looking for in a game of this particular genre is environmental storytelling, which is just always fun to enter a room, to look at it and go, oh, I think I know what happened here. Ender Lilies has a lot of that, but the fact that you're always accompanied by the Umbral Knight means that a lot of the time things will just be spelled out to you. When I played the game in early access and a lot of the in-game text was missing, I found this really cool moment where you enter an area and there's a bunch of monsters, but they don't attack you at all. And if you get past all of them, which you can kill them and they won't fight back, or you can just jump over them, you find in the far corner that there's another white priestess, same as the protagonist, who must have been there for the people who turned into those monsters until she died. And now, obviously, when they see you, they're going to think of her and leave you alone. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. Like, I could figure out this little story for myself. But now that all the text is in, I got there, and then the Umbral Knight just said, oh, she must have been with them in their final moments. And I was like, okay. That's a little bit of a bummer. It's not like it was entirely necessary for the progress of the story that I understood this exact moment. So it wasn't necessarily the best idea to just straight out tell me. And that's something that the game does pretty much in all parts, all the time. You can always find some note or some dialogue from one of your spirits or from one of the characters, from one of the dying, undead, blighted monsters that you purify, if you can call them characters, that just explains everything to you. Unlike Hollow Knight, where there's YouTube channels with hundreds of thousands of subscribers just speculating on what a bit of art on a wall means, in Ender Lilies, the developers wanted to make sure that at the end, everybody knew the full story. And that's totally fine to me. I don't think every game needs to be a big mystery fest. And the story that the game ends up telling, if you explore everything and you find all the endings, is thoroughly excellent. It's going to be really difficult to describe why I really enjoyed it and why I think it's very good without going into spoilers. But I think the most straightforward way of explaining it is that you remember how in Bloodborne the game goes from campy vampires, werewolves to, okay, now Cthulhu and aliens are here? This game does the exact same thing, except it goes from this is Castlevania to this is Metroid, to the point where I'm pretty sure one of the songs just straight up uses a Geiger counter as an instrument. I can't prove it, but it would not surprise me at all. It goes from high fantasy to cosmic horror, kind of unexpectedly, but incredibly effectively. And I really hope that by the time you get there, you will have forgotten that I told you this. But I do hope it convinces you to just go buy the game, because it's very, very good. Let's see. Okay, the art is great, the music is great. I've talked a little bit about the abilities you get from bosses, but what are the actual boss fights like? They're super intense for the most part. They require a lot of high precision dodging and parrying. They cannot be cheesed from what I can tell. They are very purposefully designed to hunt you down and murder you anywhere in the arena, which made them, very tense. They last just long enough to be exhausting. If you get to the very end, if you get to the third phase of a boss and it kills you, and that happens like 3 or 4 times, fatigue might set in. You might start to feel like you need a break from all the constant dodging and telegraph reading that you have to do to survive these battles. Because with the few HP that you have, you can survive maybe 2 or 3 hits from the boss before you have to heal or before you just die. They all use a great mix of melee and ranged attacks. Sometimes the way they telegraph some of their faster attacks can be completely lost if you activate 3 or 4 of your spirits at the same time, which is something that you're going to want to do if you want to defeat them more quickly, since they are quite dangerous to be around, to say the least. That being said, usually the only reason a boss was entirely covered and I was unable to see what they were going to do was because I activated the gas cloud and then another poison cloud ability I got later at the same time, and then I could just straight up no longer see what the enemy was doing. So keep that in mind when you fight enemies. If they are obscured by a bunch of effects, then it's because you used more spirits at the same time that you could handle. The overall navigation of the world map picks up steam over time. At first, when I first played the game in early access, I was a little worried that it was too linear for a Metroidvania, because you just kind of headed from left to right, and then there was one branch in the road, and then later there was another branch there, for a total of like 3 or 4 areas that you could explore. But if that was something that you saw in early access and thought that the game wasn't sprawling enough, I can assure you that the game opens up like crazy later in the game, where there will just be rooms with 4 or 5 exits, all leading to different parts of the map, interconnecting, overlapping, oftentimes rewarding you for noticing certain details on one map, like, oh, there's a shaft of light coming in through the ceiling. And then later you find yourself in a room that is located directly above that place that you saw earlier, and you realize, oh, if I jump down this hole, I'm gonna get to that secret room I saw before. It has a lot of those little moments. Even though the game will always tell you if 2 rooms are connected at all, even if those connections are secret, it does sometimes play tricks on you by not telling you that there are actually 2 ways to get from one room to another, and the second, more hidden way is actually a pathway to some health power-ups or to some of the relics, which are pieces of equipment that work like the charms in Hollow Knight, in that you can only equip so many, and you can gradually upgrade how many you can have equipped at the same time. And that's something that also works really well in this game, the relic system. There's a huge variety of different effects those relics can have. Now, none of them are as crazy as the... I already forgot what they're called. The medals? Charms. They're called charms in Hollow Knight. So the relics work a lot like the charms in Hollow Knight. You pick up chains of sorcery to increase the limit of how many relics you can equip. More powerful relics take up more slots. And none of these are as crazy as the charms you find in Hollow Knight. You're not going to start spawning little flies that kamikaze into enemies, but they can increase the number of times you can use sub-spirits. They can obviously increase your defense, your health. My personal favorite is the one that heals you slightly every time you hit an enemy. If you use that correctly with some more powerful multi-hit abilities, especially the Poison Cloud, which is my favorite skill in the entire game, even though you get it very early on and it's kind of lame, but it's so good. If you use it in combination with something that hits enemies repeatedly, you can refill your health for free just by inflicting a lot of tiny bits of damage to the same enemy over and over again. This is incredibly convenient. So even though the relics are fairly tame and none of them are going to drastically change the way you play the game, a lot of them have tiny bits of utility that combine into incredibly powerful effects if you play your cards right. There's even one particular relic that can be used to sequence break the game at one point, which is fun. It's just always nice when developers give you I don't know if it counts as sequence breaking if the developers allow you to do it, but basically, I was able to get into a late game area before having all the abilities you would need in it, just by equipping the right set of relics at the right time. And I did that 100% intentionally. It was not an accident, and it was incredibly rewarding to just get a look at the late game early before I was supposed to get there. So if that's something you enjoy, or if you're into speedrunning, I'm sure you'll be able to find a way to cheese around a bunch of different elements of this game. I think that's it. In summary, absolutely gorgeous. The music is phenomenal. The system of collecting spirits and using them to combat enemies is solid. There's nothing wrong with it. Obviously, it's not entirely original. Finding good combinations of spirits that really play off of one another, where one sets up the other, or if you set up your skills in such a way that you can activate all three of them at the same time whenever an enemy is stunned, and you can just chew through most of their health bar just instantly, is incredibly rewarding. The relic system, again, isn't entirely original. There aren't any crazy relics that like drastically change up the game, but the system works just fine. There are a couple of relics that are way more useful than others. Overall, a solid system. It's a fun little reward to pick these up here and there. And the boss fights are incredibly tough if you're mediocre at video games like I am. It's an excellent little Metroidvania. It's $20. It took me about 15 to 16 hours to get the true ending, let's just say. And I had fun the whole way through. It was an incredible experience. It was the best Metroidvania I've played since Blasphemous, and it might actually be a little better than Blasphemous even. But I don't want to I don't want to have to choose between those two. I love them too much. So I give this game a 0% off. Just buy it now. It is worth every penny. Jump on it. It already has overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam just from early access, and that's for a good reason, because I have overwhelmingly positive feelings about this game. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope this review helped you decide to go buy Ender Lilies and play it and enjoy it. And subscribe for more. Yeah. I was about to say, and stay tuned for my review of Do Animals Dream, and then I realized that review came out 3 days ago from the time of posting because embargoes are weird. Do Animals Dream, my previous review.
But then I realized we haven't seen that movie and I have no idea what it's about. Looper?
Looper?
Is Looper relevant?
No. It never has been and it never will be. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time.
See you later, gamers!
See you later.